I am live in deep blue Fairfax today at the office of noted Democratic consultant Ben Tribbett. He's with us. Ben, great to have you here. Dave Marston with us, Senator from Fairfax. Chap Peterson has come in, Senator from Fairfax. He's banned, though he doesn't have a mic. His wife banned him from the John Fredericks show. But he does have headphones on, but he can't talk, so he has no live mic. So don't ask him a question. Don't text him. He cannot respond. Sharon, banned chap from the John Fredericks Radio Network for the foreseeable future. Also with us, defending the Redskins name, is Mark Wolf. He drove left at 2 a.m. today from Connecticut in order to be part of this debate. He'll be with us 2 hours. Clark Mercer's on the phone. He's Governor Northam's chief of staff. He's crashing the party, so excited that he can finally talk to friends on the John Fredericks Show. So he's going to be with us here. Clark, we're going to talk Redskins, the name change, the FedEx sponsor, as you know, Fred Smith saying maybe it's time to get rid of that name. And so he bailed. He's out. And now the Redskins, after fighting to keep the name forever and ever and ever, Chap Peterson, big proponent of that. So was Ben till he flipped and went woke. But now the Redskins say they're going to do a review of this. So we're going to have a pretty thorough discussion on it. Clark Mercer, Chief of Staff, Governor Northam, do you have a position on the Redskins name?
Hey, John, morning. How are you?
Great.
Excellent. Yeah, I mean, I support changing the name, and I have for a number of years. I think if, where the Redskins are at right now and where they've been at the last few years, if you ever needed a reboot for a franchise, it's been over the last few years. So I think the timing is right. Fred Smith, the CEO of FedEx and a minority owner, didn't say he thought maybe it's the right time. He said he does prefer it. And I thought there was an article yesterday that was pretty spot on. If DC were to get a new franchise team, if we didn't have a football team and a new team came to DC, the name of the Redskins would never be picked. And folks can articulate why you would never come up with that. And John, I was a Associated Press All-State football player in Virginia. I played in college. I've rooted for the team my whole life. I had a poster of the Posse in my bed growing up, Ricky Sanders, Art Monk, Gary Clark. I'm a huge team fan. I went to Mark Mosley's camps growing up. But you know what? The name, we can tell it's honors Native Americans. We work with every Native American tribe in Virginia. And in fact, my wife is liaison to every tribe in Virginia. And, when you talk to the chiefs one-on-one without a microphone in front of their face, without talking about what a foundation might do for them financially to support them, they all say to a person, it's obviously an offensive name. And look, we've got a lot of other names.
Okay, but that's not what the polls say. The big poll that came out that one organization did to put this all to rest was that 90% of Native Americans wanted the name to stay. I mean, it's tough. Here you are, a white guy trying to tell Native Americans what to think. Sounds a little hypocritical to me.
Yeah, I'm not trying to tell anyone.
Yes, you are.
Can I just put one correction into you? Clark is not a football player. Clark was a punter. Clark was a punter, not a football player. So I don't want to correct that record.
Is that like soccer? Right?
that is a good correction, Ben. Hey, John, I think one of the I'm pretty sure in that room there, the only person who was Marston's in the Hall of Fame at his high school. I think.
Yes.
I'm not sure if Pat played or not, and I'm not sure if Ben played at Robinson. But anyway, the point being.
Well, what about me? You going to throw me out? I mean, look, I had a lot of striking.
Let me just say a couple things.
Let me just tell you this: in high school, they spelt my name Fredericks with a backwards K. That's all I want to say about that. Hey, let's bring in.
John, let me make one point because I think
go ahead.
I think you're missing it. First of all, I'm not telling anyone else how to think, but when we talk about some of the issues we're dealing with, it's okay for white people, John, to say that they're offended. It's okay for white people to take some ownership of these issues and shoulder some of these issues. This is not, George Floyd's murder is not all about how African Americans feel and telling African Americans how they're supposed to feel. The name the Redskins shouldn't just be a name.
Are you offended by it? I mean, do you get up every day and see a Redskins insignia, and do you if you?
I don't get up every day. It's not.
Are you offended by the Redskins insignia?
But John, if you let me finish my point, it's time.
You have no point, but I'm trying.
John. But when you push this off, and when you push these issues off on minority groups every time to be the ones to talk about it.
What do you mean minority groups? It's oh my God. Mark Wolf is with her. Drove all the way from Connecticut, left at 2 a.m. He got the governor's chief of staff trying to tell you what to think. How do you respond to this?
Well, I respect everybody has their own opinion, but I just wanted to make something very clear. When the name change issue came up, many Native American Redskins fans wrote letters into Dan Snyder and the team and told him that we support the name and we're the investors into this team. We have years and years of our lives invested into the team, all the gear. Many of my friends, I have a Lumbee native down from North Carolina. He's got Redskin tattoos all over his body. You got the 505 Redskins out in New Mexico, and we all got together as a collective of Redskins fans, Native American Redskins fans, and decided, the owner of the team, the management of the team, they need to hear our voice. They need to know that they're doing the right thing by helping us to preserve our Native American heritage, which is that name Redskin. That's an honorable name, honorable word. It's from a native language, the Algonquin language, and it was literally translated into French and then into English after the French and Indian War and everything. I think things get lost in translation to people who aren't involved in it, but to us as Native Americans, our ancestors used that word as a self-identifier, and that brings a lot of pride to me personally. My words are echoed throughout Native America as displayed in those polls. 90% of Native Americans, and that's all across, that's in our entire demographic of urban Indians, reservation Indians, as well as enrolled and non-enrolled natives. You go to the reservations out, especially out in the Navajo country, they have a school out there, the Red Mesa Redskins. They chose that name after the Washington Redskins. I believe it was a student who back in the late 70s, who voted or petitioned, I should say, petitioned to have their school named after the Washington Redskins. And not to mention the amount of history that we have with the team in terms of having Native Americans playing for the team, a Native American coach, Blackie Wetzel, and our logo, and how that all came about when they came to the team to have Native American honored by putting an Indian on the side of the helmet. So, there's a lot of history that a lot of Native Americans, are very proud of and everything. And I understand that, people from the outside looking in, they might not understand fully, what it means to be a red man or what it means to be a redskin or a red person in this country. But we know, and so you have to kind of take our lead. We're the ones who should be defining this term because it is from our culture and our language. So, I know things get, kind of turned for the worse over the years. People misuse the term out of ignorance. But as an intelligent society, we shouldn't, cater to the ignorance and the hateful people to define a term that was literally defined over centuries prior to the 1983 or whatever, when the dictionary decided to add in that it might be a slur or that it might be offensive or something like that. But we have centuries of history that says otherwise.
We're with Mark Wolf, member of the Board of Directors of Native American Garden Association. Ben, as you know, flipped on this, but basically what this is, Clark, is Mark Wolf saying, why should elitist white liberals like yourself tell him what he should feel?
Yeah, John, when I made my comments, I made it very clear I'm not telling Mark how he should feel, and certainly respect that you asked me how I feel. I told you, and I'm sure Mark will respect the fact that every chief that I've talked to, that's a chief of a Native American tribe in Virginia. I've not gone out and spoken to tribes in New Mexico or other states. I work here in Virginia. To a person, every chief I've talked to in Virginia sees it the opposite way from Mark, and I'm sure he would respect their views as well. And that's my view. And I'm not telling Mark how he should feel. Look, the governor's comments about Dan, when he's been asked about it, said, look, this is a private business. I'm a private business owner. I wouldn't choose to name my business something that I feel is offensive. He left it at that. It's Dan Snyder's decision. Every company that invests in the Redskins has asked him to change it. And Dan Snyder has said he's going to go about a process to change it. So look, and I think the question remains, if DC were to get a franchise team today, if they didn't have a football team, today a new team arrives, we all know that name would never be the name of a new franchise. And I'm not telling Mark.
I don't know what that has to do with anything with the change in name, Ben. Ben, why did you change on it? I mean, Ben, let me bring Ben Tribbett. Ben was like Ben went to work for the Washington Redskins company as a senior marketing executive whose main purpose was to preserve the name. That wasn't that long ago, Ben, and now you've flipped. Why?
Well, I think that the Redskins name, it's not something that offends me. It's something that I think when you look at what's happened over the last 10 years of this debate, I think the decision got made for the team. I think that's why you're seeing the team come out and change their position on it. And you can see that decision come from, if you go to any school in this area, go to any elementary school or middle school or high school, and see how many people are wearing Redskins gear anymore, and compare that to 20 years ago when I was in school, or 30 years ago when Chap was in school, or 100 years ago when Marston was in school here. And people were wearing Redskins gear then. That was something that was part of the area, culture. And I think that now you're seeing, young people don't want to wear the Redskins gear anymore because they think that it is, I don't know if it's divisive or offensive or whatever reason that they're not wearing it. They're not. I think they've made the decision for the team, and that's the end of it. Is that if young people are not wanting to have the team called the Redskins, then the Redskins are going to change their name, and that's what's going to happen. And I expect it will happen here within the next week. I don't know if it'll be the Red Tails or the Warriors or some other name, but I think that decision was made. The Redskins didn't make that decision. The public made that decision.
Do you believe that, Mark?
If I may,
yes.
I disagree that that kids are coming up with their own opinion about the Redskin being offensive. They've been indoctrinated into thinking that this is a bad word, and the voice of the majority who are screaming, the silenced majority, we're screaming out and saying, no, this is not an offensive thing. We don't want this term to become the next quote unquote N word or the R word or whatever. This is what they're trying to create here, though.
Why are they doing that? Why are the elites doing this?
The academia has some kind of weird thought that if we sanitize our history, because a lot of the American history is riddled with all sorts of atrocities, slavery and forced Indian relocation, and something that my family went through was the Racial Integrity Act, because they were living in Virginia at the time when the Plecker Law came out, in the Racial Integrity Act, where they reclassified Native Americans in Virginia as black or mulatto, and so literally erasing generations of history and things like that. But we learn about this in school, and they feel that these racial tensions that we are seeing here, erupt in the street today, are caused by learning about our history as it is. Of course, I disagree with that wholeheartedly. I think that we need to know the good, the bad, and the ugly of our history, but there's we want to sanitize history, so we kind of keep, and that's the idea, to sanitize history to keep down these racial tensions. So we don't talk about we don't talk about the Indians. If we get rid of the Washington Redskins, which is in the nation's capital, a huge beacon saying, hey, we're still here, Native Americans, this country was Native American land, but all of a sudden, if it's gone, out of sight, out of mind, and you don't have to necessarily talk about the hard things about forced relocation and the Plecker Act and all this other kind of stuff. So that's where it really, the root of it comes from. But you have all these stories about bloody scalps and, things like that. When I was growing up here in D.C., there was nothing you could say about Redskin that would offend anybody. I mean, Redskin in this town was, it was like royalty, It was not offensive at all. And in the Native American Guardians Association, I've been with them for about a year and a half now. It's a group of Native American, intertribal group of Native Americans. We go all around to different communities and things like that because we want to lay eyes on the actual people. We don't want to just call people racist and point fingers or whatever. We want to get to know people, and we want to break down those stereotypes that that they may have about Native Americans and that Native Americans may have about white communities and things like that. But to answer your question more directly, what is this about? This is about taking something away from white people. This is about revenge. It's plain and simple. One of the first things I did was to humble myself and say, hey, look, I might be biased because I grew up here in D.C. and here in Ground Zero, where the Redskins were, the team. I grew up in the, in the 80s, we had the Super Bowl and then in the 90s, by the time I graduated from high school, another Super Bowl. We were like on cloud nine. You couldn't say anything wrong about the Redskins. So I'm like, well, maybe I might be biased. What are we hearing outside of the D.C. area? And so I started reaching out and, trying to educate myself, not just by my own opinion, but to
so you
listen to
thought
other people.
you were just biased in D.C. because you're a Redskins fan.
Right,
But
right.
then Clark Mercer is saying that he's talked to Indian chiefs around Virginia, and he said, to everyone he's talked to, finds it offensive. Clark, can you give us some context here, some name? Who are some of the Indian chiefs that you talked to?
First of all, Mark, where did you grow up in D.C. area?
Well, I was born in D.C. I was raised in PG County.
I've enjoyed listening to your comments. I think we roughly are about the same age, so we rooted for the team 84, 87, 92. Man, those are the best years in D.C. history. And John, I'm not going to repeat we have. I'm not going to repeat the names of individual tribal chiefs. I don't think that would be something that they would be happy to hear about me using their name on the radio.
Right.
I'm sharing my perspective with folks that I've talked to. And look, John, my wife is the tribal liaison to every Indian tribe in Virginia, so we're in touch with the chiefs on a weekly basis. And
Dave, just put
obviously
those
there's not a consensus of opinion between every single person that's a Native American. There's not a consensus of opinion between everyone that's white. There's not a consensus of opinion between everyone that's black. I'm sharing with you what my opinion is. And look, this is nothing. No one put a gun to Dan Snyder's head and forced him to do this. This isn't the government forcing him to do this, John. And this is a decision that he's made, and it's a decision that I support personally. But he didn't have to make the decision.
Well,
And,
can I ask a question too?
Go ahead.
Sure.
Go ahead, Mark.
You said that the chiefs say, you've spoken to chiefs and things like that.
Yeah.
I would argue that an opinion based, being offended is an opinion based on a choice. Do I choose to be offended or not? And that a chief, and I much respect all the chiefs and things that I've met personally and that I've grown up with the Piscataway Nation and the Nanticoke Nation. I respect them wholeheartedly, but respectfully, they can't choose for me what I feel. And what we're finding is that maybe chiefs might say that it's offensive or whatever, but the population is saying differently
Within their tribe.
right within their tribe.
But as an example, Chief Walter Brown of the Nottoway tribe, you said you talked to all the chiefs in Virginia. Well, you didn't talk to him because he is 100% pro Redskins name. So I guess all the chiefs doesn't mean Walter Brown.
Well, I guess I'm confused, John, because you've been talking about people's opinions this whole time and how that should be impactful. And now we're saying that people's opinions shouldn't.
No, I'm saying white liberal
no,
elitist opinions like yourself shouldn't override those that are Native American where it affects them. I mean, who died and left Clark Mercer the white liberal
John,
elitist keeper
nobody,
of names.
John, this is kind of the fake news that you always are so critical of. John, I'm not making the decision, buddy, and neither are you. You know,
I'm just
right.
managing a conversation.
Well, neither are the Native Americans, really.
You're trying to antagonize.
Why don't you go to the Native Americans instead of talking to your wine and cheese liberal friends up there?
Well, no, see, John, trying to drop those things, and next you're going to talk about, lattes. You can try to stir things up. I respect Mike's opinion. I have been at the most recent was a land dedication down
Mark,
in the Northern Neck area where the name came up, and it was the chief and members of the tribe. And look, you go to another tribe, another chief, and there may be a different opinion. My point is it's not 100% across the board. And at the end of the day, this is a private business that's made a decision, and you're all about the private sector, John. You're all about private business doing what they want to do, letting the market dictate things, not having government tell you what to do.
Yes.
And government hasn't done it. So, John, if you've got a problem, why don't you pull your advertising from the Redskins and tell them you want to keep the name the same and see if Dan Snyder reacts to it?
I'm not a Redskins fan. Look, I have no dog in this hunt one way or the other.
But my point is this, John. As a private business owner, does Dan Snyder get to choose these decisions, or do you think government should choose for him?
Yeah, but he's being.
Okay, then what are we arguing about?
We're arguing the fact that people like yourself are trying to put your own spin. And by saying that Native Americans are offended, yet you do.
No, that's not. I never said that. I never, John. You asked me what my opinion is, and I told you what my opinion is. Period. Okay. And yes, I've talked to white people, black people, and Native Americans, people of all different cultures that have offered their opinion. But that's what it is. Mike has an opinion. You have an opinion. If you ever have Chap on again and he can't talk on this show, I am happy
Sharon
to come back on. Yeah, I'm happy to come back on because I know Chap has an opinion. But that's all we have, our opinion. At the end of the day,
can't come on November 5th. Sharon said Chap can't come on until November the 4th.
Well, then I will come on whenever Chap is on and can't talk because I enjoy this. But the point is, the point is, these are all our opinions. This is the private sector making a decision, John. This is what you're supposed to embrace as a Republican.
Yeah, but I think, look, I mean, I
feel
for the Redskins fans that they want to keep their name.
John, Dan Snyder donated $100,000 to Donald Trump. You can spin this as white liberal elites all you want. His minority partners, Dwight Scharr, who's a huge Virginia Republican, looking to divest the team. You can spin this however you want. This is a private sector business making a decision. It's one.
What if they make the decision? Okay, what if they make the decision to keep the name? What do you do then? Cry?
Hey, John, I had season tickets about 10 years ago. I waited for.
Well, then you abandoned them? You sound like Scott Serval. You abandoned the Redskins. What a fair weather friend, man.
John,
I've been a Titans fan when they didn't win. You guys you were a season ticket holder when they were winning. Then they went to crap and you bailed like Scott Serval did.
No,
what
John,
a fair weather friend you are.
Was one of the year that I had the tickets was one of the worst years in team history, and I banned them for how much tickets cost. I could go through my litany of critiques about the stadium, about where you park, about the fact that everyone dumped their tickets and had the opposing team fan sit next to you. It was about the worst user experience. FedEx Field is rated, out of all 32 NFL teams, the worst game day experience.
I would agree with that. Yeah,
I
would agree with that.
So
Even Chap's agreeing with that. Yeah, I've only been to 4 games there, but
I'll tell you what, John.
It was a horrible experience. The 4 games I went to. That's a horrible place.
The year that I bought my tickets was the year that Snyder took over Six Flags, and as part of that was Johnny Rockets. All of a sudden, every concession stand was Johnny Rockets, $22 for a cheeseburger. You know, when you drive up 95, the Ravens Stadium is Ravens colors. The Eagles Stadium is Eagles colors. When you drive by the Washington Stadium, it's all FedEx colors. I mean, let's get the burgundy and gold. I grew up going to RFK, man, and I hope at one point they get back to RFK.
Do you have any idea what he's talking about, Ben?
FedEx Field sucks.
FedEx Field sucks.
FedEx
Clark,
Field
we can all agree that FedEx Field really is the worst stadium ever. David, go ahead.
Well, we're fighting this fight right now at ground level. Really, this issue is being decided at 15,000 feet. You can go through all of these name changes all around the country, issue by issue, team by team, name by name. But in reality, the larger decision is being made, I think, in this country that we've got to stop doing this.
Should we get rid of the New England Patriots? Because that's kind of racist.
No,
Patriots.
They're
all
I
white.
think people know there'll always be some things that are kind of on the border here, but really these decisions are being made when you have the Dwight Schars and the people like that and the major corporations making the decision. We can have all the arguments in the world on the ground right here in this office and on this radio show.
They made the same. They had the same position in the past, and it didn't matter. But now all of a sudden, it's woke time.
It does. Things change, culture changes, people change, and we're realizing the problems that these things have caused. And sometimes the good gets swept away with the bad. But you have to be consistent.
The problem is when they change a name, they still suck.
Yeah, Shakespeare had a word for this. There comes a tide. And I think the tide has come here where these changes are going to take place. And I appreciate Mark being here and feeling the way he does. I mean, I'm the only person in this room that went to a Redskin game at Griffith Stadium. This was I go.
That was a long time ago.
That was a long time
That
ago.
was before Ben
when
was
Sonny
even
Randall
born.
was a rookie. I was at his rookie
It was
performance.
like 1964.
Oh no, we're talking 58, 59, something like
goodness.
that, and maybe 60. I'm not sure, but
So
it
you're
goes
in your
back.
80s, right?
I am.
That's why you
I'm
wear a
80.
mask.
I'm 88 at this point.
You look
Well,
very
that was
good
my
for 80.
yeah.
I
That
wouldn't
was
have thought
that was my high school.
He's-
that was my high school number.
he's
And
football.
by the way, John, I was all region in football. So.
Punter?
and basketball.
That's what I'm talking
No,
about.
I
you were
was
face to basket, right?
I was all district tournament in basketball. I played college basketball on a scholarship, but I was a wide receiver. All Northern Virginia they called it.
All right, well, here's the bottom line of this argument. And phone line's open. Any Redskins fan you want to call in one way or the other, we're going to take your calls. 888-480-JOHN, 888-480-5646. We want to know how you feel about this. You have to be a Redskins fan because then you're legit. People like me, I'm a Titans fan, and so I don't really have a right to weigh in on a team's name that I don't follow, although I can weigh in on the fact that FedEx Field, Ben, is just horrible. It's just a terrible experience, and I really hope they move out of there and get back to RFK Stadium just because I think it's good for the city I spent time in and good for the fans. But Ben, I'm very intrigued by your flip on this. And Clark's taking the position, well, corporate sponsors are bailing, and it's up to Dan Snyder. You actually believe, as well as Clark does, that keeping the name is the wrong thing for the franchise, right, Ben?
Yeah, again, I think that this decision was made for the team, by the fans, by the market, and to respond to what Mark said, and I think what he said is accurate. The kids didn't make the decisions on their own. It was made by a campaign that's gone on for a number of years against the Redskins team name, but it's a campaign that the Redskins lost. I think that what they're acknowledging now is that they lost that debate amongst young, especially the young people, and so now the name's going to change. And I think that is, when that debate was raging on, it was something that I supported keeping the name, but I think it became readily obvious to everyone in the last few weeks that it was time for a change, and that debate had been lost, and so the Redskins are going to change the name, and that's not to say that it's not critical of Mark or anyone else who continues to support the name. It's just to say that's we're a society that goes by numbers and by the Redskins have a sophisticated data operation that's looking at these issues, and I think 5 years ago they thought that the market wanted them to keep the name as it was. And I think today that it's pretty clear that they do not, and so that's why it's going to change. And I expect it will change before the season starts. I think the Washington Redskins have played their last game.
So you think the name is going to change before kickoff in September, and there'll be a different name?
I wouldn't be surprised if the name changes before training camp in 2 weeks.
And so it's interesting. So, and I'm asking you this, Ben, because we know each other a long time, and I know you bleed like Caps. You bleed Redskins. I mean, you live and die when they lose. You're in a bad mood. You get upset, like I do with the Titans. So, I know that you're coming at this not politically correctness, but as a fan. So, do you think that changing the name helps the team do better? Because that's your main interest.
I don't think it really affects how the team does on the field, but I think that, in terms of the future of the franchise and the health of the franchise, you have to have young people are what drive sports. Young people are what drives families to go to games, whether it's baseball, football, any other sport. Young people are what drives the markets. Advertisers look for a young demographic. They don't care how many people are tuned into a show. They want to know how many young people are tuned into a show because they drive the economics of our country. And again, you can go to any school in this area and you can see that this debate is over with in terms of the young people in the schools. There's no Redskins gear anywhere that you can see. And I think it is what it is.
Well, some of the schools around here, I know in Montgomery County, they actually have a dress code that has outright banned Redskin gear, and so it's not an organic thing that's happening. This is a definitely forced push to eradicate or to erase the Redskin and the legacy of the Redskin, not just from the team but also from our Native American heritage as well. Because we're talking about team and money and things like that, and I'm a fan for sure. But I'm also a Native American. I was born this way. So, at the end of the day, this is a larger implication for us because not only is it our team that we've grown up with, that literally, we're fans too, because you know what fan stands for, or fan is short for, fanatic. It's a culture. It's a lifestyle, everything that goes with, I'm sure you know the same thing about the Titans. It's a deep,
you
it's
live
almost
and
like
die
a
in every
religion.
down is what we say. We live and die in every down.
Right, absolutely. But the other thing is, at the end of the day, non-Native American people, they can put this aside and say, oh, well, it's still my team, home team, whatever, but this is my culture. And the implication of changing the name is now saying this word is offensive. And I don't know if you guys know this, but we're called Indians. It was a misnomer. Christopher Columbus thought he was going to India. You know the whole story, right? And if you look in the dictionary, every self-identifying word that Native Americans, created for themselves that was literally translated into English is listed as a slur or a pejorative. But Indian, that's not our word. That's an acceptable term. American Indian, that's an acceptable term. Redskin, Redman, all, if you look at it, archaic, derogatory, pejorative, things like that. We didn't vote on that. That's not what we said. That's not our choice to say that this was. Somebody took this term, misused it, and a lot of the times, and one of the things that I was saying that people always talk about, it's a dictionary-defined slur or whatever. The dictionary is not defining anything. The dictionary is putting a little, cautionary note. It's defined as a North American Indian. That's what it's defined as. That's what we are. So we are Redskins. Has it been misused over the course of pop culture during the 50s and 60s and the spaghetti westerns and stuff like that? Sure. Out of ignorance, because people will call somebody a fruitcake, and it doesn't mean that we should just ban the word fruitcake. But when you do that, when you censor a word like that, you give it more power to the people who want to misuse it. And that's what I'm saying. Like the reason why I'm fighting so hard, and the reason why I drove from 2:30 this morning to come, our voices have literally been stifled as far as the majority voice in Native America. 90% of Native Americans on and off reservations, upwards of 70% of Native Americans on reservations. The 505 Redskins, they live and die, Redskins and stuff like that. Like I said, they named their own school, their tribal school, after the Washington Redskins.
Mark Winwolf, how are you going to feel? According to Ben, they're going to change the name like now before training camp starts. How is it going to make you feel?
Well, as a fan, for sure, I'm going to be gutted or whatever. But the Redskins is why I watch football. Not because I was not a football fan. I didn't play Pee Wee football or anything like that. I didn't play football.
But you're
in high
just
school.
a Redskins fan.
I was a Redskins fan.
Part of it's the name.
A lot of it is the name, because when I was a kid growing up here in D.C., that our community is so sparse. You don't see Native Americans on every corner.
Right.
So me and my sisters were literally the only two Native American kids in our elementary school, whatever, and all we saw on TV was, like I said, these spaghetti westerns and things like that. The Native Americans were always the bad guys. At the end of the show, all the natives would get slaughtered. You hear the cavalry coming in, everybody would cheer. The only pop culture representation that I saw where people were rooting for the Indians to beat the Cowboys was in RFK Stadium, when that stadium literally just rocked. And when the Redskins played the Cowboys, I mean, there was everybody was on their feet. And when the Cowboys lost, everybody was, we were just ecstatic. And that as a young child, that was one of my first examples to see, hey, we're not the bad guys. So there's a deep rooted, and it's not just me. I've talked to people all across the country that aren't biased by DC, that live in New Mexico, that live in California, in North Carolina, in Oregon, in South Dakota, in North Dakota. One of my good friends, Joe Milk, from the Pine Ridge Reservation, he literally will fly out every year from Pine Ridge, one of the poorest districts in all of the United States. And he uses the money that he makes and stuff like that. He flies out to watch Redskins games. You can't. It's not just a team for us.
Right.
This is our identity.
I think. Look, it's important that your voice, Mark Winwolf, be heard, and others in the Native American community. Let's get to Scott Surville. Now, Scott bailed on the Redskins. Not necessarily the name. I don't know where he stands on that, but he was kind of mad last year when we had him on. He gave his season tickets up. He said he's tired of the team losing. He hates FedEx Field. They overcharge him. He can't park. So he abandoned the team.
Beer sucks.
The beer sucks. That's what he said. But Scott, you grew up a Redskins fan. I mean, you told me how your father, took you to games as a little kid. And it was like a big deal, and you've gone ever since. How do you feel about this, Scott?
Yeah, my dad actually only took me to about 3 games because it was so hard to go. But I used to watch the team every single Sunday religiously. And no matter what time they were on, we were there watching. And it was something I shared with my father and my brother. It was something that I had hoped to share with my kids. And, when they were little, I originally got them into it. But the older they got, the less they were interested. And now I can't get them to watch anything. I mean, I can't get anybody in my house to watch the game with me. And
even your wife?
Yeah, no, Erin, no, my wife isn't interested in that either. I mean, but I mean, part of it is the on-field performance of the team is horrible, but there's definitely a stigma that's begun to be associated with it. And my kids think I'm a fossil right now for a lot of different reasons. What's going on in politics, but this younger generation is just focused on a lot of diversity and equity issues in a way that I think that a lot of people don't completely appreciate yet. And so, with what Ben was talking about, if you want this team to have a fan base into the future, you got to get young people involved and engaged and following this team as fans, so that they'll be following them the rest of their life. And if you lose a generation, it's going to...
No, you're done.
Yeah, right. And it's also a problem for football in general. I mean, football is having a lot of problems with, the encephalopathy, the concussion issue and the encephalopathy issue and the kneeling thing didn't help. And, they need to try to bring their fans back. And I think that this move is part of that, the team reboot. And, I'm hopeful that with the new coach and maybe a new name and a bunch of new draft picks, that the team will get a resurged interest in it, and we can start going to games again, and hopefully they'll get a new stadium. It's much more convenient and has better beer and better parking, much like Nats Park.
But it's really is. It's about winning and putting a better product on as a fan. I mean, like if I just take my own experience, doesn't really relate. But I grew up an Oilers fan. I love the Oilers. Love you, Blue. That was my team. I mean, I never missed a game, no matter where it was. Oilers. We had some tough losses and stuff. Well, when they moved to Memphis, I'm not from Houston. I didn't live there, so I didn't really care about the team. I cared about my team. So then I was an Oilers fan. I loved Oilers, had all the logos. Then they changed the name of the team to Titans. Okay, I mean, I just went with it. Like, it's whatever. Titans, Oilers, it's still my team. And so I follow the team, not the name. So I kind of get where you're coming from. And I think the team does need a reboot because they've had so many problems on and off the field, so many issues. They're not winning. The stadium's horrible. So, I mean, if I'm owning the team right now and I'm under all this pressure, I can kind of see where Mercer was coming from. It's like, maybe it's just time to say, we just got to get on to something else, and so that the focus isn't the team name and it's on, like, getting players who can play defense and stop a pass, which you're not able to do.
I mean, he's even having, we read yesterday, all of his minority owners are bailing on him. I mean, 40% of the team owners want out because they're not excited about the future.
Underreported story, Servel's trying to buy the team.
He probably could get it cheap now. I mean, you couldn't do a worse job than Snyder did, right? This is a good discussion. I appreciate everybody's input here.